What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to the Blazers Uprise post-game show. The Blazers played potentially their most complete game of the season. They take care of business, beating the Golden State Warriors by a score of 123-98. This was that blowout that it seems like the Blazers never usually get, at least last season. It's been a very long time since we've been able to enjoy a Blazers blowout, but that's exactly what this was. This was a complete game. I don't have really any complaints from this game. Harry Giles got some meaningful playing time. That was cool to see. He had some exciting plays. You had Dame shoot the ball well and have a good game. CJ got insanely hot in the first quarter. He dropped 16 points, and Terry Stotts did something that me and Eric asked for in the last post-game stream. When CJ has it going in the first quarter, you can take Dame out first and leave CJ in and ride that hot streak. You know, you don't always have to take CJ out of the game first. And that's what Stotts did. So honestly, just a very enjoyable game. The defense was on point. They played good defense on Steph Curry. Steph Curry still got some buckets, but the Blazers made other players beat them. And that did not happen. The role players around Steph really are not it. And the Blazers did a really good job today of getting the ball in those guys' hands and making those guys beat them. So this should be a very fun post-game show. I'm looking forward to this one. We can talk about the offense. There's really good ball movement. We can talk about the defense. We can talk about some good performances. Carmelo Anthony had a good performance in this one. I thought his shot selection was better. So there's just a lot of good things to talk about from this game. Eric, give me your initial takeaways from this one. Just go ahead and dive into what you want to talk about.
So nice not to either be stressed out from a close game or, being mad that we're losing by 20, 30 points like a couple of the first four games. Mm-hmm. Just nice to get a blowout win. Stotts subbing out Dame in the first quarter, and then he brought him back in with the second unit in the second quarter, left CJ out there. I'd like to see that he actually did that to switch it up. I made the joke on Twitter that he must have been listening to our post-game show. But it's not even results based, because like the Trent thing, whether he was hurt or not, it's a different story. But like in that situation, like you can say, oh well, you have to put Dame and CJ and we won the game or whatever. But like I said, I don't like it just basing on results, because you don't know at the time whether that's the right decision or not. So I like making the right decision in those cases, which I thought he did tonight, and I'm glad he actually changed it up.
Yep. I mean, this is just, I don't know. Normally there's good and bad in each game, but it's hard to find anything to really complain about from this one, which is a little bit weird. It's nice, man. I mean, this team has been inconsistent to start the season, but you have two of three games they performed really well on this road trip so far. We'll see if they can keep that up, because they rematch the same team in a couple days. Who knows if James Wiseman will play? We might have Gary Trent Jr. for that game, but if the Blazers play like this, they're going to win the next game too. The Warriors cannot keep pace with the Blazers if they play this style of basketball. So shout out Dame the GOAT for $5 total in donations. Shout out to Bruce Davis for becoming a starter level member. I don't know. Do you want to talk about the offense first? Do you want to talk about the defense first? What was the most impressive thing about the way the Blazers played tonight?
Well, let me just read Dame the GOAT's things. He says Giles played and Oubre is terrible. I like the defense more than the offense. I like winning games with defense. That if we can make that our calling card, where we're actually like holding teams to 98 points, we can outscore basically anyone if we have a good defense. Even if we play ISO-centric offense and don't move the ball and have a stagnated offense, it won't matter if we play good defense every game, right?
Yeah.
So I like the fact that we came out and completely shut them down. I was actually I've seen probably 3, maybe 4 quarters combined of the Warriors' first few games, and they're terrible. they're bad. I don't even really know how to explain it, but they're not a good team. So I was glad that we came out and took care of business
That's what
against
you
a
got to
struggling
do.
team. Yeah.
Especially considering last year we didn't take care of business a lot of times when we played against teams like this
Yeah,
that
exactly.
weren't good teams. So a lot of times it would be far closer than it should have been because we weren't playing the right style of basketball. Or we'd get up and then we'd go away from what was working. I was very pleased to see us not do that today, for us to stick to what was working. For pretty much the entire game, the ball moved. There was good ball movement. You know, there's still some isolation play, but it was like CJ McCollum isolating because he's hot, and he was scoring out of those isolation situations. Like I've said, if a player is hot, I'm cool with him isolating. I'd rather, if nobody's like on fire, we should be moving the ball, getting good shots. I mean, a perfect example is the ball. There was a play with phenomenal ball movement in the fourth quarter that got Damian Lillard a wide open three. And Damian Lillard was like getting a little hot before then, you know what I mean? But still, we moved the ball so well that we got Damian Lillard a wide open three that he cashed in. So the ball movement was terrific tonight. I want to see that level of ball movement every single game, because I think this team is very, very good offensively when they move the ball like that. Let me take a couple donations real quick. Elias has a $5 donation. I appreciate it. He says, watching on NBA Live and the Warriors broadcasters are so painful to listen to. Honestly, I love listening to Lakers and Warriors broadcasters when we beat them. I would have actually enjoyed listening to the Warriors broadcasters with us blowing them out like we did tonight. That would have been enjoyable. It's always nice to listen to those guys when we beat them, especially like this. Shout out Rip City 1977 for the $20 donation. He says, love everything about the game tonight. Finally, a Harry Giles sighting. Great start to the new year. And yeah, the Blazers start this year off on the right foot. Great start to 2021. But yeah, just the ball movement and the way the offense flowed was phenomenal. And you had guys hitting some contested shots. But as I've always said, when the ball moves and the offense has a rhythm to it, guys will start to hit tougher shots. It gives the entire offense more confidence, it seems like, when the ball is moving around and touching everybody. And everybody has a rhythm when the ball is moving around. If you're standing in the corner watching somebody go one-on-one possession after possession, you're not going to have much of a rhythm. So when you finally do catch the ball and get a shot up, you're less likely to make, in my opinion, than if you're at least a part of the offense. Even if it's just catching a pass and zipping the ball, you feel like you're a part of the offense. You're able to build more of a rhythm collectively if you move the ball and share the ball together. And I thought the Blazers did a great job of that tonight.
You mean to tell me you can pass the ball around the perimeter and get Dame an open three instead of him having to make a sideways, getting fouled kind of off balance 3-pointer from 30 feet? Like, you can do that? I didn't know that was allowed with the offense. But
I mean,
good to see tonight.
And we don't do that enough, man. Like in previous years, I'm hoping this year's a little bit different. It's nice to see it I don't know. It's not consistent, but it's more consistent than it was last season. So it's nice to see that's a little bit more consistent than it was last season. So I'm just hoping that the flashes that the Blazers have shown, they can turn it into consistency, because I watched this team tonight and I watched the team that showed up against the Lakers, and I think that is potentially a contention level team. Just the defensive job in this game and in that Lakers game, combined with the offensive firepower we have, combined with the ball movement that we showed in both those games and the cutting, that team is a high-level basketball team. And the thing is, Robert Covington isn't shooting too well. Derrick Jones Jr. isn't shooting too well. Yusuf Nurkic isn't playing that well. Damian Lillard has been a little bit inconsistent to start the season. CJ McCollum's been awesome, but he's the only starter that I'd say is playing up to their talent level. I feel like, Dame has struggled a little bit compared to what he can do so far this season. Same with Rocco, same with Nurkic, same with Derrick Jones. And they've... a collection of those guys have struggled in the games that we've played well. A collection of those guys have struggled offensively in games that we've played well. But it didn't matter in the Lakers game. It didn't matter in this game. We won this game by 25, despite Rocco only shooting 2 for 7 from 3. And Rocco got good looks. Derrick Jones Jr. Didn't do much offensively, but everywhere else on the offensive boards, defensively, it was phenomenal. So that's the thing. I look at this team, and it's just dude, if they play this style of basketball and get guys going even more and get Nurkic kind of back to the Nurkic that we expect, watch out, because that team is a really, really good basketball team.
And the thing is, Derrick Jones Jr., Giles found him for a nice dunk in the third quarter. But other than that play, he barely cut in this game. So there's still room to improve his usage of the offense and get some more easy baskets too. So as they begin to figure it out, if this does become contagious and they do have more movement and share the ball more, I think we're going to have all our scorers have such an easier time scoring the ball, and our offense, it might average around the same points per game, but it'll be so much more efficient, and everyone's enjoying some of the success and will be better team for it, I believe.
Yep, 100% agree. Shout out to Reed, who has a $5 donation saying, Tory's Bill's flatter than a Patriots football. Yeah, man, I'm a snapback wearer. Eric has the baseball caps on lock, all right? So we got both those hat styles covered. Huge shout out to Elias for becoming an MVP level member. That's the top level of membership.
What's
so
up,
huge,
Elias?
Huge shout out to Elias, and another shout out to Dame the Goat for $2 donation. He says, "How about the energy and defense for Derrick Jones Jr.?" I want to wait to touch on that until we cover him individually. If you guys are new to our post game streams, we like to cover team-based aspects of the game first, and then we get into breaking down individual players and what they did in this game. So yeah, the ball movement was phenomenal to see. There was a number of plays that had me impressed, and honestly, just simple plays like that play Harry Giles had, where he dribbled and Derrick Jones Jr. cut back door, and Giles threw a perfect pass to him, and it got Derrick Jones Jr. a dunk. I love those plays. It's simple, but it's great basketball. It's great basketball. Great cut, great pass.
Yep. And that's there often in our offense when the opposing team, is ball watching, waiting for Dame or CJ to shoot. So if you just have a lot more movement and stuff like that, that's open. And that's why we've said this time and time again. Have movement off ball. It'll lead to good things happening.
Yep. And let me just be honest, man. If the team played like this consistently, I would praise Stotts as a coach. We're critical on Stotts, but we're critical on Stotts because this team can play the style of basketball, and it should be able to play the style of basketball consistently. Now, they're not always going to shoot as well as they did tonight, but if they got the shots they did tonight and missed shots, then I think the excuse of, we just didn't make shots can work. If we defended a team like we defended the Warriors tonight and they just made contested shots, then you can say, they made shots. You know what I mean? That's when that'll happen in the NBA. You'll have cold shooting nights on good shot selection. You'll have teams that get hot even if you defend them well. So that's the thing is I want to see this style of play consistently. The ball movement we saw, I want to see that consistently because it'll get us great looks and it'll get our offense. It'll build a rhythm in our offense that'll make it more likely for us to have better shooting nights. Even if the shots aren't necessarily that much better, just everybody touching the ball and the ball's zipping, this team seems to shoot better when that's happening. And then on the defensive end, I thought they defended really, really well. I thought the scheme was solid. The big was brought up a lot more than usual when they drop. The big was brought up enough to not allow Steph to get off shots, but I thought mostly it was Derrick Jones Jr. doing a phenomenal job getting through screens and not letting Steph get space for threes. So just all around, very happy with this game, just the style of play. If we did this consistently, man, I'd be extremely happy, and I think this team would be extremely good.
Yep, completely agree with you. Shout out to JM for the $5 donation. He says, someone here thinks Dame will demand a trade if Stotts is fired. LOL. Thoughts?
I mean, I don't want to get in, bro,
well, okay, so
I don't think Dame would demand a trade, but I mean, I don't really want to talk about firing Stotts because Stotts coached a great game tonight, and I try and get him credit when it's due and not just be seen as the Stotts hater or whatever.
Well, he's talking about Portlandia, who said earlier, "Oh, see, Tori and Eric, if this team is elite, I've been trying to tell you that," something like that, and we're like, what part of Tori and I have you guys thought that we don't think this can be a good team? That's why we're so critical of the coaching, is because we agree this team should be a contending team. We have the pieces to be an elite team, and I feel like it's wasted when we don't at least try to do different things when other things aren't working, or when we play a certain defensive scheme the entire year and we're next to last in the NBA in defense, but don't switch it up ever or try to see if our personnel could fit better in a different scheme or a more aggressive defense or something like that. But those are all criticisms because we think this team has talent. If we didn't think this team had talent, we wouldn't really care about these little coaching decisions because they wouldn't matter because we wouldn't be a good team. So we're like that because we agree. We do think it's an elite team. And Dame, if he would demand a trade if Stotts got fired, then he would have demanded a trade when like Tim Frazier, his best friend, got traded. He would have demanded a trade when Mason Plumlee got traded. When we didn't re-sign Ed Davis, like all guys he liked. Dame is a loyal guy, but if we underperform at some point, like this goes downhill and Stotts is fired, Dame's going to understand. He's going to take some responsibility for that actually and say, you know what, that's partially my fault. I didn't play well enough, even though he's like our best player. And he'll get over it and realize that it was a decision that had to be made or whatever. But it's on him, too, to perform so Stotts doesn't get fired. So if he's not going to play well, then that's probably likely a reason why Stotts would also get fired. So I don't think he would be mad at the organization. I think he would understand. He would be pissed, and it would take some time for him to get over that, most likely, but he's not going to demand a trade. And none of the qualities that makes him a loyal person would all of a sudden just turn off and change who he is and like want out of Portland just because they decided to go in a different way with the coaching staff.
Yeah, shout out RIP Blazers $2 donation. He says, this the start to a 7 easy game win streak. We will touch on the future games a little bit later in the stream. We'll look ahead. We kind of did that last stream, but yeah, the Blazers could be, if they play like this, they could definitely get a win streak going considering the level of talent that they're facing in the next month, essentially. It's a very easy month for the Blazers, in my opinion. And if they play like this, they can beat pretty much anybody. Here's the thing with I will get this back on track, but here's what's funny to me is like, I'll hear people say, this team, look at the way this team is playing. You might start to agree with me on Stotts. But that's twisted because the reason why we're critical of Stotts is because this team should be playing this way. You know what I mean? Like, if this team playing this way, I will praise it. So the team played like a well-coached team tonight. 100%. Against the Lakers, the team played like a well-coached team. When the team doesn't play like a well-coached team, when they're super stagnant and not doing anything offensively and don't seem to have any plan on the offense, and then they're running the wrong defensive scheme and not adjusting like they did against the Clippers, they were getting absolutely crushed by the Clippers offense, and they didn't make one defensive adjustment, then we'll be critical of the coaching, right? It's so funny, like, people will disagree with us on things we want to see out of the coaching staff, but then when the coaching staff does it, they'll praise the coaching staff and say, see, look at that Stotts adjustment. And it's like, yes, exactly. You should be doing that more, So the conversation gets super twisted on that, and it's funny because I'll have people call me dumb for what I want to see Stotts do, and then they'll praise Stotts for doing those things, It's kind of silly, but yeah, I mean, if this team plays like this, perfectly happy. This team needs to play like this night in, night out. I will have nothing to complain about. I will love Stotts as a coach if this team plays like this. Stotts could win Coach of the Year if this team plays like this. The problem is it'll be like one good game like this and then a letdown like the Clippers. And then one really good game like this and then another letdown. So it needs to be consistent.
Yeah. You have comments like this. Just give him a fair shake and not judge him on some isolated games. Bro, Tori and I have been making these same points. I've known Tori for 3, almost 4 years now, and from the beginning, the first time we had a conversation in a forum, we were talking about how Stotts doesn't make the right decisions as a coach and his like offensive and defensive schemes aren't great. He just relies on Dame and CJ to score the ball and all that kind of stuff. So it's not any isolated games, and we back our stuff up. If you think otherwise, just look at our offense in the playoffs compared to the regular season and our defensive rating last few years.
It happens too much. Like you'll have bad games. You'll have games where just like the team isn't mentally in it and isn't mentally locked in. You know what I mean? And like every coach coaches a bad game. I'm not trying to say like anybody's perfect, right? So that'll happen. It needs to be more consistently like this. The problem is it hasn't been consistently like this enough. And here's the thing: like this roster. Olshey did a great job this offseason. Olshey did a great job of putting together a good collection of pieces. Now it's up to Stotts to get this team consistently playing like how they did tonight, because if it culminates in that, if Stotts gets the team playing like this consistently with the roster that Neil Olshey has given him, this team is contention level, and that's basically all I want. That's basically where all the emotion and everything comes from, is I want to see this team truly contend. So yeah, I mean, this was a really well played game. Early in the season you've had a lot of blowouts with like bad teams blowing out good teams, so I guess gotta give the team time to like try and get it more consistent, because honestly there isn't a single consistent team in the NBA right now. It's kind of wild with how variable some of the scores are. So but yeah, I mean, like when the team plays a bad game, yeah, you know, point out the areas of improvement and the areas where we went wrong, and that's what the team should be doing too. That's how you improve at things. You find the flaws in the process, you find the flaws in what you're doing, and you work on them. You address them and you work on them. And if this team is doing that, that's exactly what it should be doing, you know, and hopefully if this team is doing that, then you'll see more games like tonight where we were playing a great brand of basketball.
And I was going to touch on this when we talked about Derrick Jones Jr. in particular, but you've made a point about Olshey that I want to just bring up right here. So Stotts made the decision to put him on Derrick Jones or on Steph Curry, which was the right decision, right? That was a great decision to do. But I just want to make one thing clear. He shut down Curry because he's a good defender. It's not because we like changed our schemes. Like Stotts did the same thing with like Mo Harkless. He tried to do the same things with.
I thought we brought the big up more. Do you not think that? I thought we brought the big up like a lot more than we did in that Clippers game.
But regardless of what was happening behind, because we didn't really have to worry about the big because Jones was getting through the screens. He wasn't like leaving Curry open a lot. So it was hard to tell what our defensive scheme was behind him because he was getting through the screens and not even making it an issue where Curry could drive. But a lot of the times where we did bring the big up, it was when, in the second half, I don't know if it was because of foul trouble or what, but Dame was guarding Steph a lot. He kind of lost him a few times. Mm-hmm. But this is why, like in the bubble, we had such a problem with Melo at the 3, because in Stott's defense, you have to have a forward who can guard multiple positions, including the best team's player if they're the point guard. And we saw like Dame and CJ have to do that a lot more than they were used to in the bubble. It kind of worked out for them in some games. But like over the course of a season, you need guys like a Derrick Jones Jr. or a Mo Harkless who can absolutely take advantage of those situations, even if they're having a tough defensive assignment.
I feel like every team needs those guys, though.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No,
so it's not
I
just like a Stotts defense. Yeah, you know, and most contending teams have multiple guys like that. So that's, you know, I mean, you can. If you coach well, you can kind of make up for that, just throwing different things. Like it's more challenging on the coach to not have guys like that. You know, I feel like Stotts could have done a lot more to try and compensate for that, and that's kind of where he went wrong last year. But Olshey went out and got those guys, so that's why I'm happy. But I think it's a combination of both. You know, Derrick Jones Jr. was doing a good job getting through the screens, but then also if he had a little bit of trouble, we had the big hire today. I thought, you know, with Cantor was playing higher, and he kept getting kind of abused because of that, because he's not good at defending in space. That's why I wanted Giles to play more, because Giles is better defending in space and better playing up on the pick and roll. It seemed like every time Cantor got in the game, they went on an offensive run, even when Curry wasn't in. Their first real run of the first half came with Curry out of the game and Cantor was in, and Cantor was kind of struggling defending those screens. So, you know, but I thought Stotts came with the right game plan, didn't have to make any adjustments because it was working. Like, Derrick Jones Jr. did a great job, like, overall, no complaints there.
Yep, for sure. And I wasn't saying that to bash Stotts. I was just saying, from my point of view, it was just a good defensive player making good defensive plays, which, of course, you need good defensive players. But I didn't see anything, like, schematically wise that was super different. I mean, yeah, we did, especially we'll talk about Giles later, but when he came in the game, he definitely is more active off of those screens on defense and can completely change the game with the way he can stop the guy coming off the pick and recover back to his man. I'd like to see that more from Ennis Cantor as well. But overall, it's hard for me to tell a lot different schematically defensive-wise other than Derrick Jones Jr. just having a monster game and playing very well tonight.
Yeah. I mean, All I said is they just got to bring the big up higher. If they still kind of want to run the same principles where they guard the pick and roll the same way and kind of don't have the big like playing all the way up, you at least got to bring them up enough where if Curry gets loose off the screen, he's there to at least make it a difficult shot in a contested three. And that's what I saw tonight. So either way, the defense was very good. You had great defensive play from Derrick Jones Jr. He had 5 steals tonight. Just played phenomenal. We can touch on that more once we get to him individually, but yeah, I mean, the other thing I like that Stotts did is something that you and me asked for in the last post-game show, and it's funny because I saw a couple people on Twitter, a couple media guys who have just bashed us for criticisms of Stotts. I saw a couple of them say, "Oh, great decision by Stotts to leave CJ in the game and take Dame out first." And it's like, we've been a little bit critical because he hasn't done that much in the past, and it doesn't make sense. Like, if CJ is hot, leave him in the game. So I was very happy when CJ was hot in the first quarter. Instead of subbing CJ out first and leaving Dame in the game like he normally does, he recognized the situation and took Dame out first, right? Mm. And CJ kind of has had a couple more buckets throughout that quarter, and the offense was still working well because CJ was so hot. He was drawing a ton of defensive attention, probably more defensive attention than Damian Lillard was because of how hot CJ was. And then Dame started to get going there a little bit in the second quarter when he got subbed back in. And Dame really got it going in the second half. But yeah, that was a great rotational decision. And like, when CJ's hot and Dame is struggling, that should always be the case. You can ride the hot hand. You can, if Dame's like struggling, sub him out a little bit earlier. Let him like watch the game and maybe see areas he can attack, and then sub him back in earlier in the second quarter, and he can go against that bench lineup after a rest, and he could potentially get going that way. So yeah, that should always be the case whenever CJ is like as hot as he was, and it's CJ carrying the team offensively. He should be the one left in the game. If it's Dame carrying the team offensively in the first quarter, and this applies to the third quarter as well, then it should be Dame left in the game. And Stotts did that tonight. It was very good to see.
Yep, I got to give him credit for that. There's some other rotational decisions that were very mind-boggling to me, but one step at a time, baby steps. He did the right thing in the first quarter, I thought.
Yep, definitely want to see that every time CJ has it going like that, because CJ has had some great first quarters in a lot of games in the past. I don't want to see him get going like that and then get taken out of the game when you can ride that hot hand a little bit more. So yeah, I enjoyed watching CJ in the first quarter. I feel like this year, he didn't really have. I think he only had 3 assists tonight, but he took the right shots. And the only time he took difficult shots was when he was hot, and he made a decent amount of them because he was hot. That's the thing. I'm cool with him going one-on-one to an isolation step-back J if he has it going, if he's hit like a couple threes before then, because he makes those shots more often when he has like that confidence that he gets from like a hot run. So that's the thing I've always said. I don't want it going straight into the game and us just like immediately going one-on-one and CJ maybe missing a shot, being cold, at the start of the game, but just continuously going into one-on-one, tunnel vision, shooting a bunch of like contested fadeaway too. Same thing with Melo too. But if he gets it going, hits a couple threes, hits a couple shots, builds some confidence, builds some rhythm, then pretty much any shot he takes, I'm cool with. You know what I mean? And honestly, there was a play where he probably could have forced, I forget the result of the play, but there was a couple plays where he was hot and probably could have forced a contested 2, but passed it up, and it ended up with the team getting even better shots. So CJ's playmaking and decision-making has been better this year than in the past in regards to whether or not to shoot or pass, in my opinion.
And there was a one play in the second half where he drove baseline and dumped it to Ennis, who would have had a wide open dunk, but he like fumbled the ball and lost it. So yeah, he did have some nice passes that didn't lead to assists, but it's I think if he continues to pass the way he has this year, it'll open up his shots even more, like we've been talking about. But yeah, very very solid game from CJ.
Yeah, and since we're basically breaking down CJ at this point, we'll start breaking down the individual players from tonight's game. He had 25 points. 16 of those were in the first quarter. 8 for... Oh, wait, no, that's an old... Hold up. That's from last game. Hold up. Let me pull up the right stat line. There we go. 28 points, 16 of those were in the first quarter. 4 assists, 11 for 21 from the field. That's also what Dame shot. CJ was 4 for 11 from the three-point line, meaning he was 7 for 10 inside the arc, and that included some tough shots. But yeah, a very solid offensive performance from CJ. 4 assists, man. Like, that's the thing, is 4 assists is solid, you know, especially in a game where he had it going offensively. He had 1 assist at the end of the first quarter to go along with his 16 points. In the second half, he's a little bit more passive and made the right pass. He didn't quite have that same confidence, so he was just making the right pass and making the right play. I think CJ has done a really good job this season of making the right play, and it could end up with him being an all-star. The way he's shooting the ball right now, as well as the way he's playmaking. I mean, the dude's averaging at this point, like after 5 games, he's averaging, I think, 28 points per game and 6 assists. And he's shooting like 43% from the field after 5 games, or 43% from the 3-point line after 5 games. Like, if we are a top 3 team in the Western Conference, I think CJ McCollum has a good chance of making the All-Star game with some of the performances he's had. I hope he keeps it up. You know, he's probably going to come a little bit back down to earth. I don't expect him to average 28 for a whole season, but he's playing like a legitimate All-Star right now. He's playing phenomenal basketball, and it just makes me laugh at all the people that say, oh, he's not worth this contract at all, man. We should just trade him to save money and start Gary Trent Jr.
Yep, and we're going to need all these guys to at some point in the season. You see now injuries are already taking a toll, which is another reason why I wanted to be a little better at the end of our roster. But anyways, yeah, CJ had another good game. I like that he's off to a good start this year. And Dame had a good game today, which we'll get to in a minute. And it's nice to see them both play well on the same night again. That's at least 2 times this season. Where in the past it's kind of like one person has a good game, the other person doesn't. Mm-hmm. And it kind of balances out, but I'd rather them both be playing well at the same time.
Yep, 100% agree. And for all the people that were saying, oh, we have to trade for Harden, I mean, CJ is doing, like, he's not quite Harden level, but he's, I mean, you're getting 28 and 6 out of him. You know, if you put Harden on the team, is he really doing that much better in terms of just scoring output and playmaking output next to Dame, and Dame's going to have the ball a lot? Like, I'm not sure Harden would. Like, Harden's obviously the better player, but considering all we'd have to give up for him, considering how ISO heavy he would be, that's why I wasn't really on board with a Harden trade. Like, yes, our talent is better, but this team would not be moving the ball as well as they were tonight. You know, this team, I don't know. And with the way CJ's playing right now, he's playing at a high enough level that I wouldn't say it's a drastic upgrade. It's still definitely an upgrade in terms of talent, but just, you know, there's a bunch of other things that would be offset by that. You know, not as much ball movement, maybe a locker room issue. Dame and CJ do a really good job of knowing when to play off of each other. Who knows if that would happen? Who knows if that would be as good with Harden instead of CJ? Like, there's a lot of question marks in regards to that, so that's why I wasn't really on board with it. And CJ is doing a great job of you know, making his case in this situation with his play.
Yeah, like Allison says, the man doesn't want to be traded.
Yeah, he's stepping up, man. So, and it's funny because he came into camp looking super out of shape. It looks like he's lost like 10 pounds since the start of the preseason. And it looks like he's moving a lot better than he was at the start of the preseason. And we'll get to Nurk, but that's kind of my same hope with Nurkic. Yeah, and I enjoy watching CJ more than I enjoy watching Harden too. You know, Harden's obviously the better player. I'm not trying to say he's not. So before anybody calls me crazy, Harden ball is definitely not the most entertaining thing to watch. So you know, CJ can be frustrating, but he hasn't really frustrated me at all this year. He's been a very, very good player. So let's talk about Dame. Let's talk about Damian Lillard, who showed out tonight. You're not going to have NBA Twitter trashing him like they seem to love to do lately. I don't know why. But he dropped 34 points and 8 assists, shot 11 for 21 from the field, 3 for 10 from the 3-point line. This was, I don't know, dude. Like, it seems like every time he has a 30-point game, he's had, I think, 2 30-point games this season. It's been a little quiet. Like, he didn't really have to. I don't know what it is. I think it might be like he didn't have to score such difficult shots compared to last year. Like, he's getting better shots, and he's struggled to knock some of them down, but to get 34 points last season, he would have had to hit a number of insanely difficult shots. He got a lot of good, clean looks, I felt like, today, and he was really able to just kind of ease his way throughout the game. Then he got hot in the second half and hit a couple deep ones, a couple contested ones, but like overall, it seems like his 35 point games are a little bit quieter to start this season than they were last year, just because he's getting better looks. I thought he got clean looks this game, and he cashed them in.
Yeah, I think tonight was the first game he got to the basket a lot easier than some of the other games. So that kind of opens up his three a little bit. You have to play a little bit off him so he doesn't blow by you. But he definitely took advantage of the rookie. Wiseman got a couple of early fouls on him. And then, he's so good at like switching hands or going under the basket to finish, or just quick laying it in when the defender thinks he's going to go up strong or something. But tonight he finished really well, and that was something that he hadn't really done a lot of in other games. I know like Serge Ibaka is a good defender. Anthony Davis is a good interior defender. So a lot of the teams we played had good interior defenders that made it so he couldn't do that as easily. So it might just been a product of playing a weaker defensive team. But I felt like getting to the basket opens up so much more for him.
Yeah, I mean, let's see, and Blockboy says, but Tori told us a game ago Dame looks like he's hurt or something because he's not blowing past guys getting to the rim. I mean, Dame looked a little bit like he had a little bit more spark tonight. I mean, maybe that's just, maybe my eyes are deceiving me or something, but he looked a little bit quicker. I feel like that he got to the rim a little bit easier tonight. But also, he was going against a weaker defense. Dude, he looked so insanely quick in the bubble last season. Like, maybe for whatever reason, that just having that layoff and then going into the bubble, like, so motivated, he was just playing with an extra little bit of burst. But his burst was insane in the bubble, and maybe I just think he's a little bit slower. Just maybe he doesn't have that level of burst. He's still insanely quick, but in the bubble, man, he looked like maybe the fastest player in the league in terms of like acceleration. The way he was blown by guys in the bubble was insane. So maybe I'm just holding him to too high of a standard in that regard. But we're talking about very quick and lightning quick. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. He looked fine tonight. He got clean looks. I think it also helped that he didn't have to attack a defense that was set. For the most part, he got good ball movement and got driving lanes just because the ball was moving before getting him to him for the most part. Shout out Near012 for the huge $50 donation. That's insane, man. Wow. Greatly appreciate it. He says, Happy New Year's. I have to work in the early AM, so I wanted to make sure I got my Blazer fix for 2021 started off right. You guys are awesome. Keep up the grind. Greatly appreciate it, man. That's a huge donation. Means
Happy
a lot.
New Year.
Yeah, thank you to everybody who supports us, whether just showing up for our streams, donating, commenting in chat, hanging with us on Twitter. However you support, I greatly appreciate it. But yeah, Near Zero, that's crazy, man. Appreciate it. Hope your 2021, hopefully everybody's 2021 goes well. We got it off in the right way. I'm kind of stumbling over my words because that's a huge
maybe every game this year we'll be happy after we blow out teams after a post game.
Yeah,
we're just gonna win every game, right?
Yeah, dubs for Near Zero in the chat. But yeah, so just a solid game from Dame. It was nice to see Dame and CJ both kind of get it going in the same game. We hadn't really seen that so far this year, so getting both of them going was nice to see. You couple that with the defense they played, and this team is very, very, very hard to beat when you got both those guys going and good defense on the other end.
And Dame last game was 0 for 8 from 3, and that was only, I think, the third time in his career that he shot at least 8 threes and didn't make one. So you knew that wasn't going to hold up long. And yeah, there was some talk, especially from a certain person in chat right now, about possibly the lineup being the issue, which could very well be a possibility still. But I just think after 4 games, it's hard to tell whether playing like Derrick Jones Jr. and Robert Covington with Dame is that much of a difference. So I think you saw tonight that he can still get good shots. But yeah, I'm not really able to make that determination off of like a historically bad game for Dame shooting the ball. I'm not gonna like come to the conclusion that Dame just doesn't have it anymore. This lineup is garbage around him for his efficiency or whatever. Because I think you saw tonight that he's just as capable of having a great game.
People are overreacting. I said last game, like, he's had 4-game stretches like he had the first 4 games. He's had those in the middle of seasons all the time, but because they happened in the middle of seasons, everybody was just like, oh, well, it's just a little 4-game slump. He was killing it before this. I expect him to be fine. But since it comes at the start of the season, everybody overreacts to it. I always feel like the first, 4 or 5 games of the season, people overreact to in terms of player performance. People, 5 games in, oh my goodness, why is, so-and-so shooting so bad from 3? Like, they're awful. They suck. Like, I'm so worried about them. But it's like, if that happens in the middle of the season during a 4 or 5 game stretch, nobody really bats an eye at all, because it's just, slumps are normal. It's just, for whatever reason, if a slump happens at the start of the season, people overreact and think that's kind of how they're going to be for further along in the season. Like, throughout the season, that's kind of how they're going to play. Most fans weren't like that with Dame, but I legitimately saw some people like, oh my goodness, is Dame declining? Like, come on. It was a little bit ridiculous. Shout out Jackson Burgess. Sorry if I butchered your last name. I don't really know how to say that, which I probably should, but
that sounds right.
He says, shout out for the $5 Australian dollar donation. He says, enjoyable game to watch. Giles brought some good hustle in his minutes. Let's go Blazers. And we will definitely touch on Giles once we get to him. You got anything else left to talk about with Dame?
Nope, just good game from him.
Alrighty.
Didn't expect anything else. Oh yeah, my mom, thanks for reminding me. So he reached 15,000 points. Great milestone for him.
Yep.
Yep.
Good milestone for him to hit. Speaking about milestones, next guy we got up is Carmelo Anthony, who passed Tim Duncan on the all-time scoring list in this game. I believe he's 14th. He's the 14th. He scored the 14th most points in NBA history. He had 18 points, 5 rebounds, shot 5 for 9 from the field, 3 for 4 from the three-point line. This was a good Carmelo Anthony game. Thing is, I thought he got his best shots. He had the best shot selection out of any game this year. There was a couple of fadeaways where it was like, come on, Melo. There was one to start the fourth where he was, his footwork was just really weird. Yeah. And it looked like almost airball. But it's just like, man, I want to see Carmelo Anthony shooting threes. If he's posting up, taking it to the rim strong. He had a really good and one where he took it to the rim strong, drew a foul, and got the and one bucket inside. I like it when he does that out of the post. I wish he'd do that more. It's really good to see, because I think that he draws more fouls that way, and he's also more efficient if he just takes it stronger, and he shot 4 of his shots were threes out of his 9. I think that's a pretty good ratio. He was 3 for 4 from them. He's still a good 3-point shooter for sure. And the thing is as I've always said, I'm cool with a fadeaway or two, a mid-range fadeaway or two. Once he hits a shot, a catch and shoot 3, or maybe he gets ran off the line and takes one dribble in and hits a 3. Like, I feel like he gets going that way. I've always said this. Carmelo Anthony gets a rhythm and gets going by shooting catch and shoot 3s, and by, catching the ball, getting ran off the three-point line, maybe pump faking, his defender blowing by, taking a dribble and shooting that mid-range, where he's already facing the basket and he's not fading away. He gets going off those shots. He's more likely to hit a mid-range fadeaway if he shoots it after he knocks down one of those types of shots than if he just goes straight into the game and immediately starts only shooting turnaround fadeaways. So that's the thing, is I want to see this Carmelo Anthony more often, where he shot a couple turnaround fadeaways, knocked one down as well. But I thought the shot balance from Carmelo Anthony was really good tonight, and it's what helped lead him to a good performance where he's dropping 18 points and 5 rebounds.
And for me, I am going to document this every time he touches the ball in the post. So the first 2 times, not a single person moved. You have Cantor sometimes fighting for position to get a rebound or whatever. But other than that, the other 4 just standing around. So once again, the people like Chris Stevens makes a great point that that when he gets double teamed or when the defense collapses on him, he'd be so much better if he passed in those situations. But the thing is, he didn't have any, he had to shoot in some of those because there's no one to pass to, and that's our offense, is just posting him up. So I still want to see some cuts. So what happened the third time he touched the ball in the post, same thing. 4 guys standing around. Nothing's happening. but he couldn't get a shot off. And the offense looked like it was about to sputter. All of a sudden, Simons goes cutting down the middle. So he wasn't open, but the defense turned and watched Simons go through, and that left Robert Covington open. And Melo swung the ball immediately as soon as he was open. Robert Covington didn't catch the ball really well, but then he kind of jumped. I thought he traveled, but then he threw it to Derrick Jones, who then dumped it off into the corner to a wide open Anthony Simons, and we got a 3-point shot out of it. And that's the kind of situation I'm waiting to see. Why aren't we running plays off of that, taking advantage of the defensive attention to Melo? So, I want to see that. And then the next time he touched the ball was an immediate touch pass, I think, to Robert Covington again, who passed to Anthony Simons, and 2 straight plays he got a 3-pointer. So, and then in the second half, at least when CJ was the facilitator, we had Melo standing at the top of the key, and he was the outlet for CJ when he was getting double teamed, and Melo was immediately passing in those situations to the corners, and we got a lot of good shots out of that. So once again, I feel like Melo, if that is a focal point that we're telling people in this situation, watch for this guy cutting or watch for this guy in the corner, he'll be open. I think Melo can make those passes and will be willing to make those passes. I just don't think that's the design when we post him up. It's just okay, let's give Melo a touch and let him score or whatever. And that's our offense. That's what Stotts is telling him to do. So I can't really blame Melo for taking those shots if Stotts is giving him touches in the post versus getting him open for 3-point shots or doing those other things I mentioned.
And as I've always said, in that case, he should just try and take the ball stronger. It seems like far too often, he'll have a mismatch against a guy who's smaller than him. He could just bully his way into a layup or into a foul, and he settles for those mid-range turnarounds. So, if he has it going, I'm cool with mid-range turnarounds. It's just out of the post, man. I wish he'd just try and just get downhill and get into the paint and draw fouls and get easy buckets inside it. And we saw a play that had both of them where he drew an and one on an interior bucket where he attacked instead of selling for that mid-range turnaround fadeaway. So that's the thing. It's we do definitely have to get better at playing off of Melo when Melo gets doubled, moving to the right spots. Maybe it's a relocation depending on how the defense is structured behind that double team that they send Melo. But teams still double team Melo, so it can open up a lot of good ball movement opportunities. We saw that tonight. It's definitely it's still a work in progress, but I like the development I'm seeing in that regard, at least tonight.
The only thing I'll say, counter that, I do agree with you that in the situations where he has to shoot the ball, he might as well try to take it hard and get a foul. But if he drives a majority of the time when he's in the post, it kind of negates the advantage of the double team if he's dribbling into the paint where a guy could have been open if they cut. But when he backs out like he's going to shoot a fadeaway, if he's got 2 guys on him, that leaves the paint wide open for someone to just dump down through there. And so, it's not necessarily a bad thing if he's not always driving to the hoop. I just wish they'd take more advantage of those situations.
Yeah, but, he can still throw the ball back out instead of settling for, with, 16 on the shot clock instead of settling for that turnaround jumper. If he turns around pump fakes, draws 2, nobody's open, kick it back out, and then maybe you can get more ball movement like that, or they can throw it back in, and then he can attack. And then, maybe the double team comes at the end, and then maybe this time the right guy cuts. There's he did a better job of making the right play tonight. He did a better job of making the right shot. I don't agree with the kind of what you're implying that sometimes he has to settle all the time for mid-range turnaround fadeaways. I'm cool with him shooting them if he gets going, but oftentimes I feel like he settles for them a bit too much when he doesn't have to. Sometimes it's, it's almost like screw it, nobody's cutting, and the paint is packed, so I can't drive, so I might as well just turn around and shoot it. And a lot of times I feel like, okay, honestly, you should never just say, screw it, I'm just going to turn around and shoot this if it's not a good shot and he's not going, and that point he could dribble it out and maybe set a direct handoff, pick and pop for him, and maybe he gets an open 3. You know what I mean? So that type of thing is I want to see more of Melo being a little bit more measured on the interior shots he takes. And I thought tonight he did a solid job of making the right play, making the right pass, shooting the right types of shots, and he had a very good game because of that. Carmelo Anthony can legitimately help this team when he plays this style of basketball, and I thought he had a solid game, and he contributed to this win tonight for sure.
Absolutely.
So, next guy we got, let me see who we got up here. Next guy we got is going to be Derrick Jones Jr. because he filled up the stat sheet tonight. He had 8 points, 8 rebounds, 5 steals, was 3 for 7 from the field, 1 for 1 from the 3-point line. He also had 3 assists to go with the 8 points, 8 rebounds, 5 steals. He played a very solid defensive game tonight, played 33 minutes, had a couple plays that he probably should have finished layups on. I'm still waiting for his finishing to kind of catch up to where it was last year, because last year he shot almost 68% inside the arc, and this year he's kind of been struggling a little bit to finish. But the thing is, man, we got Derrick Jones for energy. We got him to use him as a cutter. He had a great backdoor cut. Giles found him on a feed. He got a dunk. We brought Derrick Jones Jr. in to play defense, and he played phenomenal defense tonight. Got 5 steals, and some of his steals were very, very impressive. He played phenomenal defense on Steph Curry, getting through screens, because that's the thing. Steph Curry, they use him off the ball a ton, running off a bunch of screens, and normally it gives us fits because we don't have somebody who's a good defender who's also good at getting through screens. Like, we had Al-Farouq Aminu and Maurice Harkless that were our good defenders in the past, but they were not as good at getting through screens as Derrick Jones Jr. is. Maybe that's because Derrick Jones Jr. is so damn skinny. It's a little bit easier for him to weasel his way through places, but he is great at getting through screens. At least, tonight he was great at getting through screens, and it helped slow down Steph Curry and make life tough on him. He played great defense tonight. Rebounded the ball really well, too. In the third quarter, dude was crashing the offensive glass extremely hard, and it led to a lot of offensive rebounds for us. It might not have even been Derrick Jones Jr. Rebounds. There was one play specifically where I felt like Ennis Cantor got an offensive rebound, in part because Derrick Jones Jr. crashed the boards hard and made it so that the Warriors couldn't secure the rebound and end up going to Ennis. So just all around great game from him tonight.
Yep. Good night, Near 012. Have a good one. Happy New Year.
Yep.
It was actually 1 for 2. Your graphic says 1 for 1.
Was he 1 for 2? Oh,
yeah.
Oh, well.
But Derrick Jones Jr., that's one of the more memorable defensive performances, I think, in terms of just completely taking a really good player out of a game that I can think of in a long time. Yeah, we had some good defensive performances, including Derrick Jones Jr. against the Lakers. But in terms of just a guy who normally would kill us in games, and him just taking him out, I can't think of a recent performance like that we just took him out of the game based on one player playing really good defense.
Yeah. So, I mean, I
like what
I've seen from him so far. I wish we'd be able to get him out in transition a little bit more, and wish we'd use him a little bit more as a cutter. But overall, he's been what we were missing last season, and he's been a huge help on the defensive end. I
also love the fact that he picks up his player full court.
Yeah.
We haven't had that in a while. Usually, you let the point guard dribble up the court, but he's harassing him, and that takes a lot of energy away from the opposing guard, or makes a guy like Steph have to give the ball up and let Draymond take it up the court. And that's also, it won't show up in the stat sheet unless he gets a steal or something, but that takes your toll on you for a game, having to always start your offense out of position, to have to always use energy to bring the ball up the court. And that's really cool to see. And that I'm surprised Stotts lets him do it. So credit to him for actually letting him do it, because we haven't really had anyone do that in recent memory either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100% agree. So he just provides a spark when he's in the game too. I get I get hyped at some Derrick Jones Jr. plays, because he's such a high flyer, such an athletic guy, and hustle guy defensively, comes up with big defensive plays, and brings a spark, man. If there were fans in stands, I feel like he would get Blazer fans on their feet at least once a game every time they play in Moda. Too bad we can't have fans in stands. Maybe in the playoffs. We'll see how everything turns out. I would love to watch him play in person, and he's a very fun guy to have on this team.
Yeah, and so Portlandia says that can lead to foul trouble, though, but most of his fouls, I can't think of a single one where it was in the backcourt. It was all trying to fight through screens and getting caught in the air against Steph, because he's so good at manipulating his body and stuff. So I don't think any of his fouls tonight were because he picked him up full court. So, but sometimes that can lead to foul trouble. But if you have a guy who's capable of playing the full length of the court every night and doesn't get tired and has energy to do so, you might as well let him do it. There's no harm in that, I don't think.
Yep, I agree with that. Let's move on to Yusuf Nurkic, who had 8 points, 8 rebounds, 3 for 8 from the field, 1 for 1 from the 3-point line, 1 for 4 from the free throw line. He's been struggling a bit at the line. I would like to see that improve. But overall, like, not the best game from Nurkic, but I felt like we saw more flashes of, like, the old Nurk. I feel like Nurkic has played a bit lackadaisical so far this season and hasn't played with the same spark and same energy. I felt like there was a lot of possessions today, a lot of plays where he played with more energy and more spark, which was good to see. It didn't really translate to a better stat line or anything, but he played with better energy, I felt like, tonight than any game previously this season, which was good to see. He moved a little better defensively on some plays than I feel like he's moved all season. Some of those he picked up fouls on, but overall he just looked a little bit more spry, had a little bit more spark to him. I think he's still a little bit out of shape, and that'll take time for him to get his conditioning back. But I think we should hopefully at least see some steady improvement in that area.
I like when he grabs the ball with his hand and like goes up with it. Like if you remember the play I'm talking about, he did that the previous game as well. He just looks like so much smoother when he does that. It's not as clunky.
Not the sweet move. Oh, the layup. Yeah, the layup where he took the ball strong, man. That was that. I want to see that from Nurk more often. I want to see him take it strong. He did it at the end of the Lakers game twice, where he took the ball strong against Anthony Davis and got 2 layups. I want to see more of that.
Yep, and once again, I feel like Nurk is one of those guys who thrives off of getting others involved in the offense, and then he can take over and do it himself. So that's, I think his game is predicated on having ball or off-ball movement too. So because I think he'd much rather have a sweet backdoor pass than get a layup himself or whatever. So I think we should design a few more plays at the beginning. We've seen a couple games now where we've actually gone to him in the post a little bit because he's had an advantage. But I'd like to see some action out of that where he gets a nice pass, and that can get him going mentally just as much as a bucket, I think.
Yep, 100% agree. So overall, he played a solid game. I mean, he played. Let me find it here because I thought this was kind of crazy. And he played 18 minutes tonight. He was in foul trouble. He picked up 5 fouls. But in those 18 minutes, he was a plus 29. Now, that was mostly due to playing next to CJ and Dame when they got hot, Yeah. So, obviously, there you got to provide context with plus minus. And it can be a very noisy stat because it's obviously dependent on all 5 people on the floor, so not just the one. But plus 29 in 18 minutes, that's pretty good, especially when you compare him to Ennis Cantor, who was a -7 in 11 minutes. We'll touch on him. I just thought Nurkic played solid defense tonight, rebounded solidly, missed a couple bunnies inside, but there was a play I think he missed 2 shots on, and he got the third rebound and got to the line. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's not going to make his field goal percentage look good, but on that play, he got to the free throw line. On that play, he missed 2 shots. So, that's the thing, is like, you can't just base it everything off of statistical output. I thought he had a very solid game tonight. Not good by his standards, a good game. He's scoring more than 8 points and he's having more of an impact, and he's not fouling 5 times and only playing 18 minutes. But overall, he was solid. He didn't hurt the team. I feel like when he was in the game, he helped the team with his defense, his rebounding. We didn't really see a ton of playmaking from him, but there was a few plays where I felt like he sparked some good ball movement with a good initial pass. So overall, I think he helped the team tonight.
And Trevin brings up a good point. This easy stretch might give us a perfect opportunity to kind of get him back into form and become the old Nurk, hopefully, or at least see more shades of it than we've been seeing. Hopefully we have a lot of winnable games where just being on the court, he'll make an impact, but he can also kind of get back into shape and do things that way.
Yep, 100% agree. So Robert Covington is up next. He had 8 points, 11 rebounds, 2 assists, was 2 for 7 from the 3-point line. He was 2 for 8 from the field. 2 for 7 from the 3-point line. Would like to see him shoot a little better. I'm still waiting for him to get hot because he had really good looks tonight, and still, he's shooting a little bit better than he did like right at the start of the season, but he's still like slowly coming out of a shooting slump. I feel like one of these games he's going to go 5 for 7 from 3, and we're going to win by 20 because of it, because he got great looks today. Only knocked down 2 of the 7. But overall, I mean, we didn't bring Robert Covington into Portland to be JJ Redick. You know, we brought him in to play defense, to rebound the ball, to make the right play. And this is what I always say, man. If you have a guy that consistently takes the right shot or makes the right play, they can have a bad shooting night, but they can still help the team by making the right play. And he helped the team by making the right play throughout the game. I love Robert Covington because he makes the right play on the offensive end. He's a very smart offensive player. You wouldn't really know it because he doesn't really have the ball in his hands a lot of times, but for the most part, he's in the right spots. He makes the right pass. He takes the right shots. And for a guy that's so good defensively as he is, that's, you know, the type of thing you want on the offensive end. He rebounded the ball well tonight with those 11 rebounds and played a good defensive game. He didn't really guard anybody worthwhile. You know what I mean? Like, was he guarding? Who was matched up against Draymond at the start of the game? Was it him, or was it...
Yeah, he was guarding Draymond.
Yeah.
Nurk was guarding Wiseman, and we had Dame on Oubre and CJ on Wiggins.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Draymond is a bit washed, and this was his first game of the season, first game back. This was Draymond's first game in at least 9 months. So, yeah, you know, that wasn't the toughest defensive assignment, but overall his positional defense, some of the deflections he got this game, he was very solid on the defensive end. Just waiting for that three-point shooting to come.
Yep, and once again, we haven't had a guy like this who is just so solid defensively. You know exactly what he's going to bring every night. And as the players get more and more comfortable with knowing that he's going to be back there off ball helping, I think it's going to be so much easier for them. And it will allow people like CJ, who overhelps a lot, to maybe not have to help at all in certain situations. There was a couple times tonight when Dame was guarding Steph that he overhelped, and that you never overhelp when you're guarding Steph Curry. Like, that was kind of dumb, but like, hopefully as the season goes on, they'll learn, like, oh, never mind, Rocco's off ball, I know he'll have that rotation there, and I can stay on my guy and make sure he doesn't get an open three. So a lot of little things he brings, but if we're truly going to be a contender, we do need him to shoot better, and hopefully that'll come.
I don't necessarily agree with that. Like, he didn't shoot too well against the Lakers. We beat the Los Angeles Lakers, and we played a great game. You know what I mean? It would definitely help enormously if he shoots a little bit better, but I don't think it's a requirement for us to contend. It would be very, very nice, but I think just this team playing the right style of basketball and playing the right style of defense can get this team to contention level regardless of how Robert Covington shoots or Derrick Jones Jr. shoots, because we can still be, I think, a top 5 offense if we move the ball, even if those two guys don't shoot too well. And then what they bring defensively, there's been, you know, this game and the Lakers game, we looked like a top 10 defense in the league. Overall, we haven't been good defensively. I think we were ranked last going into this game. We have faced a very tough early season schedule in terms of some of the teams we were playing, and we did have some huge defensive letdowns, but I'm seeing a lot of promise on that end. I'm seeing a lot of, you know, I'm seeing them play a little bit more consistently on that end. They seem to be a little bit more on a string, and overall, you know, once Nurkic gets his conditioning back a little bit more, once he gets more into the groove of things, I expect his defense to improve. I love what I'm seeing from especially Covington and Derrick Jones, just the different dynamic they give this team, and they give this team a fighting chance on the defensive end. Yeah,
the only thing I'll say is that in the playoffs, like in a 7-game series, we've seen other teams adjust and need guys to step up. And so, like, there's going to be a time where we either need to kind of change up our offense a little bit or have those guys be able to hit those shots. So I just hope it'll make life easier for everyone else if he is hitting those shots.
See, though, like, if you make the right cut, it might not even be him being able to be in, or it might not be him needing to knock down threes if he makes the right cut. You know, if a guy leaves him and he cuts to the right spot, he can get a bucket on the inside, and the team has to respect him as a cutter. I've noticed a lot of plays where he's cut baseline instead of spotting up for three, and he got fouled on one of those plays today where he cut baseline and got free throws out of it. So that's the thing with like him and Derrick Jones Jr. Like, if they're struggling from three, I hope they can consistently continue to make the right cut. because you don't have to make defenses pay from the 3-point line. If you make the right cut, you can make defenses pay for leaving you and not paying enough attention to you just by cutting to the open spot, cutting to a cussing if you're mellow, but cutting to a spot where you can actually get a pass delivered to you. Being in the passing window, that's a big part of cutting. You have to cut to a spot where the person with the ball can actually get you the ball. You can't cut right behind a defender where the offensive player can't get you the ball. There's a lot of little things to cutting, but I expect him to hit shots. It'll come and it'll happen. And he shot 50% from the 3-point line in the playoffs last year, if I recall correctly. I think it was like 32 for 64 or something insane.
Yeah, 50%.
So,
yep.
If he does that again, you can't leave him. But, if he's struggling from 3, I've noticed him cutting on a lot of plays where he's made the right cut. So regardless, I'm very encouraged from what I see from Robert Covington. I think the shooting will come, and if he's struggling from 3, like I've noticed that he can cut as well. He's a solid cutter.
I absolutely agree with that, except for the fact that I'm just used to seeing Portland not cut in the playoffs and stuff, and then become so reliant on their ISO basketball that I'm worried. Not necessarily Robert Covington's fault. I'm just worried about the team going back into that in general. So, but the better percentage he shoots from 3, also the more those cuts become available too. So, I don't know. I'm not worried about him yet. I think he's fine. I like the shots he's taking. Unless it's the end of a shot clock, I don't ever see him forcing shots or trying to do anything out of his skill set on the offensive end. So that's really nice to have a guy like that who's just steady, and the shots will come, I believe.
Yeah, and I mean, he shoots. Black Boy has a good point. He does shoot them with confidence. It's not something where like he's a Minu catching the ball wide open, like pump faking, and then like stepping forward, stumbling forward, and then like, okay, I should probably shoot this. He does shoot the shots. He does shoot the 3 ball with confidence. His shooting will be fine. Like he's in a little bit of a slump. Once he breaks out of it, this team will be even deadlier on the offensive end, and he will provide a guy that can step up and have 20-point games. We haven't really seen that Rocco yet, but that Rocco is still there for sure.
Yeah, we saw like Bazemore last year. He couldn't hit a 3, but he was still taking guys off the dribble like he's Dame or something, and like trying to finish. And you saw Hazonia do the same thing at times. It's like, dude, like you're shooting like 15% on layups. Don't freaking drive and shoot the ball or whatever. But they keep doing it game after game, and then we have to like get rid of them because they can't play within the flow of the offense. So completely different seeing a guy like Robert Covington struggle shooting wise and his impact on the game everywhere else versus guys that we've had in the past that, if they didn't have good shooting nights, might have actually hurt the team versus him actually impacting the game in so many other ways that he's still beneficial even when he's missing shots.
Yep, I agree. Let's talk about Anthony Simons for a second. He had 11.6 rebounds, was 3 for 8 from the 3-point line, 3 for 12 from the field. He missed shots in garbage time, but Anthony looks better this year. He had a really good drive and kick out to Harry Giles where he was kind of creative, and I thought he was going to get stuck, and he like contorted his body in the air to get it past to Giles. Giles ended up fumbling the ball and then getting blocked on a hook shot. But overall, Anthony looks like his shot looks better, and I'll touch on that in a sec. But he looks just more comfortable off the dribble and more comfortable driving the lane and just more under control and more kind of knowing what he wants, like the spots he wants to get to. We haven't seen much of that, so maybe it's just, the small sample size or something. But overall, he looks better to me. It's kind of an eye test thing, right? He looks better with the ball in his hands. He's made the right pass on a number of occasions so far this season in the limited time he's gotten. He's stronger. His shot looks better. His shot looks smoother. The rhythm looks smoother. His just overall, I love his shot this year compared to last year. He has more arc on the ball. It doesn't seem like he has as much of a thumb flick. I'm getting into very detailed stuff here, but overall his shot looks better. Defensively, he looks better than last year. Like, I see noticeable improvement just by watching him in a lot of different areas of the game. So, like, yeah, he shot 3 for 12 from the field tonight and 3 for 8 from 3. Like, that's solid. That's 37.5%. So, that's an improvement over last year. But the thing is like, I feel like a lot of his improvement you can't really point out with stats. It's more just watching him. I feel like I sense improvement in a number of different areas. And maybe that's just me being an optimist with his development, and maybe me being biased. I'm people would probably say that. But based off the eye test, I think he's improved for sure.
Yeah, so Alex G says Simon's skill set is out of a number one option, but how does he fit as a role player? I do agree that he does have like a skill set of being like a really good scoring guard eventually. But I kind of like this year that, other than in garbage time, of course, we haven't really forced him to have to run the offense much, and he can be more like Gary Trent Jr. did last year and just come in and knock down some threes. That's all we need of you. Whereas coming off that 37-point game the season before, he was kind of forced at the beginning of last year to kind of develop into the backup point guard, and they tried to force him into that role when he probably wasn't ready for that yet. And eventually they had to go back to having CJ be the second unit point guard and all that stuff. So I think the fact that he has a little less responsibility within the offense and can just go out there and hit shots and make plays, I think that's a little better for him. But you've also seen him be a little more comfortable out of the pick and roll, like you mentioned, as the ball handler. So, it's one of those guys where you'd love to see him get some quality minutes, but there's just so many good players ahead of him on this roster that unless there's injuries like tonight, you can't really blame Stotts for not playing him much. At the same time, you'd like to see him get a chance every once in a while. I wouldn't say he like jumped on his chance tonight, but I thought he played well enough to not be taken out of the rotation next game, at least get a few minutes and see what he did.
Yeah, and speaking about him as a role player, he's made some solid cuts so far this season. He had one where he cut and got a pass, and he ended up getting blocked on the lay-in, but the cut was nice. So he's doing a better job playing off the ball, and then he's doing a little bit better job of not kind of forcing shots. He's taken some contested threes, but he's knocked down some of them. He hasn't really gotten super clean looks from three. He shot 3 for 8 on pretty difficult 3-point attempts this game. In my opinion, he got a couple open ones that he missed, but a couple of the ones he hit were contested, including the one off that ball movement earlier where Rocco had that really weird jump pass to Derrick Jones Jr. and then Derrick Jones Jr. like almost handed the ball to Anthony in the corner, and then Anthony hit that contested 3. But I think his shot is going to be better because of the added arc. I said last year that his shot was a little bit too flat, and I feel like you can notice a difference that he has better arc on his shot, and it's going more often because of that.
Yep, I agree.
So next guy we got is Ennis Cantor, who, I mean, This one is probably going to be the most negative player that we talk about. The thing is, though, like Ennis Cantor is not a good defender, right? Like you bring him in for his offense. Against some teams, his defense is fine. Against a team that runs as many perimeter screens as the Warriors do and are so perimeter based and have a mobile big like Wiseman, who Cantor was matched up a little bit against today. Cantor, I think they ran small ball and ran Paschal at the 5 for a little bit there, and Cantor struggled with that. Like this was not a good matchup for Cantor, and when he was in the game, our defense was noticeably worse. And he didn't provide that like offensive impact to really make up for it. So he was really the only player I could say hurt the team today. And the thing is, it's not even like something where I'm gonna like blame him because he just is not a good defender. He's just not. And it's like he doesn't have the mobility to be able to do some of the things that like Nurkic can do and Giles can definitely do, and some of it is just instinctual things that just aren't there for him, right? Maybe you can blame him for some of it, but overall, like, this is just who he is, and he was just poor defensively today. When he was on the floor for his 11 minutes, the Blazers got outscored by 7 points. Compared that to Giles, the Blazers outscored the Warriors with Giles on the floor, with Nurkic on the floor. When Cantor was in the game, they got outscored in part because just the defense was far, far worse.
Here's what I think. When you're up 20, I don't like bringing an offensive lineup in that's not great defensively. We have the personnel to play different styles and have different lineups out there. So when we're up 20, I would rather go with more of a defensive big like a Giles, or, if Collins is healthy, like a Collins, because if you have an offensive-minded lineup, if they don't score, it could lead to the other team going on runs. Whereas if you have a defensive lineup, even if you're not scoring on that end, you can still shut them down and maybe keep your lead 15, 20 points or whatever. I think the lead got down to like 8 points at one point in the second quarter. So it's just, I'd like to see Stotts, instead of just, okay, here's my first lineup, here's my second lineup, like we talked about with Dame and CJ being interchanged. Now I'd like to see him be like, okay, we're up 20. Let's put in a lockdown defensive lineup and just seal the game right here and put them away and not even let them get a momentum hitting shot or a dunk or anything like that. But instead, we have this lineup that just gives up a bunch of shots, and all of a sudden Paschal hits a few shots and he gets going, has like 8 points in the quarter, and then they're right back in the game because we can't make stops on that end. Yeah. And like you said, it's not Cantor's fault. I just wish we'd use him more against teams where he's a little more playable against certain teams. So I just wish we would use that.
Yeah, I agree, and we'll compare him to Cantor. Let me just, a little side note real quick. We are reading chat, by the way. Like, if we don't, RIP says, good night, guys, I'm going into work right now. I'll see you later. I know a couple other people said they were dipping out, and, just with the analysis and with how many people is in chat, we can't really, address a whole lot of it. But that doesn't mean we're not reading it, so appreciate you guys being participants in chat. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I still don't like the Cantor and Melo pairing. I think Giles or Nurkic is a better big next to Melo. Their styles contrast in a better way. Giles and Nurkic can help Melo out a bit more defensively. And then, I don't know, if you're running ISOs through Melo, I feel like Nurkic or Giles is better to have off the ball than Cantor, just because both of them can hit a 3-point shot once in a while, and Cantor doesn't really do that. And they're a little better as a dump off. I wouldn't say that, but just overall, I just think Melo with Nurkic works better. I wish they'd stagger Cantor and Melo a little bit more, just to play Melo with Nurkic more. When Melo was on the floor next to Nurkic, and especially with Dame, he got good open catch and shoot 3-point looks, which I think is his best shot to be shooting. Whereas when he's in the bench lineup without Nurkic, without Dame, he resorts on isolation a little bit more, and I feel like that's not quite as good as him just shooting open catch and shoot shots. So Cantor with Melo, I think, is just, I don't like playing Cantor next to Melo. Given what I saw from Giles tonight, I mean, Giles looked a little bit unsure, but it's his first meaningful action of the entire regular season, on a brand new team. So, if Giles was getting consistent minutes, I expect him to look a little bit better. I just think I'm still on board with, I would rather play Giles over Cantor at this point. I still hold that opinion.
Is Giles up next?
We can make him up next. Do you want me to bring up his? Yeah. Let's bring it up.
So I wrote this down. Then I go to @ToryJonesYT. I basically had written down word for word what you tweeted out a few minutes, right at the same time. So Nurk picks up his third foul in the second quarter. There's 4.5 minutes left. It's the perfect time to throw Giles in the game. Cantor had been struggling a little bit. They had taken him out earlier than they would have in a normal game. Nurk picks up his third foul. Why did you go back to Cantor there? I don't understand that. Put Giles in the game and let's end this quarter off, see what he can do. Give him, that's the perfect chance. You hadn't played him the first few games, fine. But just throw him in that situation and see what he brings in that opportunity and see if he can give you a spark or do it. I know we were winning, but that was the absolute perfect moment to be okay, Giles, I know you haven't gotten a chance until garbage time in any game, but here's your chance. Here, you got 4.5 minutes. Go prove something out there. And I think he would have shown something. He got a chance in the second half, but at the time I was yeah, Tori and I had the same thought.
Yeah. I mean, he brings a spark. He brings a spark. And here's the thing, we were winning, so we didn't really need a spark. We were already playing with a spark. But in games where we're down, I want to see Giles just because he brings a spark, man. That was a phenomenal defensive play, hustle play where he dove on the ground and like somehow threw the ball back. I don't even know how he did that. And then Dame got a 3. Like, dude, I knew this game was in the bag when that play happened in the third quarter. I think it was like near the end of the third quarter. That was basically the dagger there in the hearts of the Warriors. He can play defense. He was solid defensively in the minutes he got tonight. He can pass the ball. He had 2 assists. He had a beautiful pass to a backdoor cutting Derrick Jones Jr. that got us a dunk. He can rebound the ball. 5 rebounds in 13 minutes. He's an all-around player that provides a lot of different things. We've seen flashes of him being able to knock down a 3-point shot. And the thing is his style is a perfect contrast to a lot of the other players on this team. You know, he can feed a cutting Derrick Jones Jr. He can pick and pop and maybe shoot a 3. You know, I want to see him shoot more 3s because I like his stroke. So maybe he could be a floor spacer. He's definitely
more grab a rebound and dribble the ball up the court.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he can push the ball up the court and can help us get into a faster tempo in that way. And he's just a better defensive player and a better defensive fit next to a guy like a Carmelo Anthony on the bench. So I'm still on board with Harry Giles being our backup center. I probably won't change my opinion on that whatsoever. But, you know, I understand, I kind of understand why Stotts would lean towards Cantor. He's just more proven. We made the Western Conference Finals with him as our starting center. He's had some good offensive games. So, I understand the reasoning and the logic behind it. I just hope that Giles gets more opportunities. At the end of that first half, like you said, that was a perfect time to bring Giles in, and Stotts went back to Cantor, even though Cantor got abused defensively during his first stint during that half, you know? So it's man, I just hope that Stotts is a little bit more willing if Cantor is really struggling defensively to take Cantor out and throw Giles in, especially if we're down, especially if our defense is already really struggling and the other team is hot and we might need to pressure a little bit more on pick and rolls and that type of thing. I hope that Stotts is willing to give Giles more of a chance than he has.
Yeah, so was this first play the play where CJ found him for a dunk?
Mm-hmm.
And then he has that defensive possession, and then we score a 3. We went on a 5-0 run in 45 seconds, right? And then the thing is, we've gotten blown out in 2 of the first 4 games. And Giles didn't get any minutes. If you're getting blown out, the energy, everyone's body language is poor. You need someone like Giles to come in. He makes that play early on in the late in the first quarter, early in the second quarter in the Utah or LA Clipper game. Maybe that sparks a little bit like a 10-0 run or something, and we get right back into that game. And instead of playing them even the whole rest of the game and end up losing by the amount we were down by in the second quarter, we make it a game and actually have a chance to win at the end or something. I just wish I'd say the same thing I said about Little last year when he comes in and shuts down Siakam for 3 quarters and then we don't really see him play again for several games, and he doesn't play the fourth quarter even though Siakam's going off. It's
Hazonia gets subbed in and then Siakam starts killing Hazonia.
Energy guys can bring it. When you're struggling that bad on defense, bring in some of these energy guys and see if they can make a difference just with their hustle. And a play like that could completely change the course of a game. And I just don't know why he wouldn't go to him over Cantor when we're down by 20 or something, because Cantor's not going to do anything really to change that. I mean, he's a solid player, but he's not going to make a play like Giles made tonight that'll completely show how much energy he has and stuff like that.
Yeah, 100% agree. So the only I don't have a graphic for Blevins or Ellaby. They didn't even do anything. The last graphic I have is Rodney Hood left the game with quad cramps. Only played 5 minutes. I'm glad that they definitely shouldn't risk messing around with a lower body injury to Rodney Hood like they did last year, where they played him with a sore Achilles and then he tore his Achilles. So, I assume it's just Rodney Hood didn't play for a year and he's getting back into the swing of things, and now he's dealing with cramps. That's not really surprising. Hopefully he can play on Thursday. But yeah, I mean, Or it's Sunday. What day is it? Today's Friday. What am I talking about? Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, hopefully he can play. But here's the thing: like this team has depth, so we were able to absorb that loss and still like put out. We didn't have either of our backup wings today. We didn't have Trent, and we only had Hood for 5 minutes. But we were able to play Anthony as the backup guard. And we were able to, basically, Rocco played some 3. Derrick Jones Jr. played some 3. We have the depth to be able to absorb, losing both our backup wings. And honestly, it's like I kind of didn't notice he was gone until like halftime. I was like, oh yeah, Rodney Hood only played 5 minutes. I was expecting him to play a little bit more than that, and he's hurt. And I don't know, like we can deal with injuries this year. So hopefully one of our backup wings is back. That would be nice to at least have one of them. If Trent is back, then I assume Trent gets the backup 3 minutes instead of Hood, and Anthony gets more minutes. That's the thing, is like Anthony's going to be the guy this year that, if like Carmelo's out, then Derrick Jones Jr. might play more 4. Gary Trent Jr. might play more backup 3, leaving more minutes open at the guard spot for Anthony. Like, no matter who gets hurt, I feel like it opens up a little bit more minutes for Anthony just because we have versatile position players. And, I'm just hoping that Anthony just continues to improve and succeed in those minutes. But, I mean, quad cramps is nothing to be worried about. I'm glad that they didn't, mess around with that. Hopefully it isn't something that's lingering.
Did they possibly learn their lesson? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, quad cramps are a little bit less serious than a sore Achilles, but no reason to push him.
Yeah, I'm just glad they decided to hold him out. Like we're up double digits. Like there's no reason to push him or force him to play. But hopefully it's just cramps and that's all it was. But definitely something to monitor.
Yep. So that wraps up the individual players from this game. I will go through the Warriors box score. I will go through the Warriors box score as well. Let me pull it up on my phone. I don't want to risk an ad playing in the background. So you had Steph Curry scoring 26 points for the Warriors, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, was 9 for 20 from the field, 4 for 12 from the three-point line. Damian Lillard outplayed him. It's always a good day when Damian Lillard outplays Steph Curry. Steph Curry has struggled to get going this year. He's getting the Dame treatment, and he doesn't look any better than Dame does, I think this could be the season that Dame truly surpasses him in the eyes of some NBA fans because, Steph Curry has always kind of had a great team around him when he's played. Last year was the first year he didn't have it, only played 10 games, struggled, got hurt. This year, now he's healthy, hopefully he stays healthy, but he's not even playing like that bad, but he is getting 26 points per game and 6.5 assists per game, but he's shooting 32% from 3. He's shooting 32% from 3. I don't expect that to keep up, but Steph Curry every season in his career has shot over 40% from 3. I think this year, I don't think he's shooting 40% from 3 this year.
He missed a couple of easy ones tonight.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, bro. Like playing against him, and this is kind of how it seemed. He just doesn't seem as lethal. Like, and I don't know if that's just because we're able to give him more defensive attention, but he doesn't seem like the Steph Curry from 2 years ago that would just pull up from 30 on a fast break and take your heart out, rip your heart out type of Steph. It's like, he's still obviously a great shooter. It's just he doesn't seem otherworldly like he's always seemed.
Yeah, I think this is what happens. So prior to winning a championship, you're obviously hungry and driven to reach that level, right? Mm-hmm. And then, for 2 years he was the MVP. And then, they get Durant and they're basically this team that everyone expects them to be great and win the championship and stuff like that. So to go from that to then have a starting lineup when you're playing with guys like Andrew Wiggins and Kelly Oubre and stuff like that, it's got to be. I mean, I'm not saying this is totally the reason, but it's impossible not to have the same intensity that you had 5 years ago when you're competing for championships versus, maybe I can carry this team to the 8 seed or something like that. Yeah. It's a little, and you can see him on the bench. He's laughing, joking around like it doesn't even phase him or anything. And he's got his 3 titles. So like maybe he's just kind of content on where they're at. And once they lost Clay again, he probably knows that they're not going to win a title this year. So
yeah, I mean, they have Minnesota's first-round pick, which could be really good this year. It's top 3 protected, so they won't get it no matter what or anything. If it's a top 3, Minnesota will keep it. But like, they got some assets to make him move in the future, so maybe that's why he's kind of relaxed. And in the future, maybe they go and trade for an all-star and get Clay back, and they're right back near the top of the Western Conference. Right now, this team does not look like a playoff team whatsoever. I mean, outside of Steph, is there one above-average NBA player on this team? Because Kelly Oubre has been awful. Blazer fans overrated him. He was solid during stretches last season for the Suns, but they didn't have him in the bubble and they went 8-0. You know what I mean? Like, he's really, really struggled. Defensively, he doesn't impress me. A lot of people try and say he's a good defender. I don't think he is. And he shot the 3-ball decently last year, but for his career, he's not a good 3-point shooter. That's their second best player is Kelly Oubre playing like this. Maybe you could say it's Andrew Wiggins, but I've always said he's insanely overrated because he's a terrible defender when he shouldn't be. He doesn't play with any heart, and he's not efficient, and he's not a good floor spacer. 1 for 3 from 3-point tonight for Andrew Wiggins, 5 for 12 from the field. Like, that's a solid game, but, I mean, he's not a good defender, and offensively he's not efficient enough to justify all the shots he takes, and he doesn't really make plays for others. So, yeah, I mean, dude, the rest of this roster is just straight garbage to me. Like, I really like James Wiseman, but he's not an above-average NBA player yet. He's still a rookie. Draymond Green is washed. Like, Draymond Green, especially on this team, isn't going to have as much of an impact. He's kind of a system player that is better depending on who he's playing next to. He's not a good player next to Wiggins and Oubre. I mean, the rest of this roster is just garbage, man.
I really like Wiseman. He had a rough game tonight. Had that scary fall. I went back and looked at it. He just got tripped, but it initially looked like he fainted and face planted. So I was glad that that's not what happened because he had COVID earlier on, like a month or two ago. So I was glad that wasn't a serious injury or a serious fainting situation, which we need to talk about little here in a few minutes. But I think Wiseman has the skills to become that player. Probably not quite there yet. And then, I mean, who knows if Draymond will ever be close to the same again. He's another one of those guys who you saw it in the year we went to the Western Conference Finals. He was horrible during the regular season. And they challenged him to get back into shape for the playoffs. And he really worked hard to lose some weight and be ready for the playoffs and actually had a pretty good playoff run, especially against us. But he just doesn't seem motivated to even care much about the regular season anymore. And that's kind of that's probably going to be their downfall, is that they have too many guys who are used to only caring about winning titles to now it's hard to get up for a game 5 of a regular season when you know you're not going to win a title. So
Pascal had 13 off the bench in 17 minutes. That was really their only other notably good performance. That was probably their only notably good performance on their entire team because Steph was solid, but by Steph's standards, that I don't know if I'd say that's a good game. Kelly Oubre was 4 for 12 for 10 points. That's not a good game. Draymond 0 for 3. James Wiseman 2 for 8. Kent Bazemore had 8 points on 3 for 4 shooting. That's definitely a good game for Kent Bazemore. But their bench is bad, and they're used to having a good bench. So it's not only like you got Kelly Oubre and Andrew Wiggins in the starting lineup breaking a bunch of shots and not playing good defense. You also got your bench is I've never been high on Kevon Looney. They got Kent Bazemore, Juan Toscano Anderson, Brad Wanamaker, Damian Lee. Mike Mulder, I think his first name is. I forget. It's Michael Mulder.
It's Michael, with a Y.
Jordan Poole. Dude, their roster is not good. And I see people saying, Steve Kerr got overrated. He was just good because of the players he had. Dude, you look at the starting lineup, they only have one respectable 3-point shooter right now, and that's Steph Curry. All the motion and ball movement and stuff they run doesn't really work if you have 4 other guys out there that literally basically can't hit threes. Draymond, Oubre, and Wiggins today were 1 for 9 from the 3-point line. And that's not even like out of the norm for those guys. Draymond has regressed from the 3-point line. Kelly Oubre has been horrible from 3 to start the season. Andrew Wiggins has never been a good 3-point shooter. Then you got James Wiseman in there who can occasionally knock down a 3, but you don't really have to respect it yet. They got no shooting in their starting lineup. Off the bench, you got Bazemore, who's not a good shooter. He was 2 for 3 from 3 today, but Pascal, who's inconsistent. Looney doesn't shoot threes. Like, Wanamaker doesn't scare you. Like, they have no shooting on this team. It's, I don't know. Like, the system's not going. That system is not going to work well if you have that much of a deficit of shooters.
So it's not like when they had Livingston and Iguodala and guys like that coming off the bench.
I mean, the thing is, you had enough shooting around those guys to like make those guys thrive. You know what I mean? You take like Iguodala from those teams and put him on this team. He's not making the same impact, in my opinion. So I don't know. Like, Steve Kerr's won multiple championships, ran a phenomenal system, ran a phenomenal offense. Like, and people are going to look at this roster and blame him. I think that's kind of ridiculous to me.
And see, this is the case of personnel.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they run a lot of creative stuff. There was one play in particular, I forgot what happened, but I remember Hurd saying, like, wow, that was an incredible play out of the timeout by Golden State. And, they're pretty creative with stuff. They just don't have the pieces to do that. Whereas if they had, like, Clay on this team, then you could start to question, like, why are they struggling? Like, why is this happening? But I think they're finding it's really hard to have like one good player and have so much, because every team is just going to sell out to stop Steph because they're not worried about every other player. And if Oubre and Wiggins are shooting the way they are, they don't have a chance to win many games.
They need like a CJ McCollum, you know. They just need another offensive threat. And Wiggins is not that. He's always been insanely overrated to me.
I think Clay's like a career like 44% 3-point shooter. So like you can't leave him at all, and he'll kill you. And he gets it all off of passing. He doesn't really create a lot of his own shots, because there was the game he scored like 60 points. I think he had 12 dribbles the entire game or something like that. Or it might have even been less than that. So like he's a guy who is an outlet, and if you don't have that outlet there, that draws all the attention to you. And so that I don't know what to do if you're Kerr. You can't really fix that if those guys aren't hitting shots. And I know we joke about Stott saying that a lot. And, they just hit shots, or we just miss shots or whatever. But I mean, you saw some of those looks they were getting tonight, and they were just breaking them time after time again.
Yep. So let's jump into around the NBA. Let's talk some NBA scores real quick. You had the Memphis Grizzlies beating the Charlotte Hornets. The Grizzlies were shorthanded. They were without Jaren Jackson Jr., they were without Ja Morant, but they were led by 21 from Oregon Duck Dylan Brooks, 18 from Kyle Anderson, who's played phenomenal. Kyle Anderson had 18 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. He's been like quietly impressive for them this season. Have you been paying any attention to him? Because he's been balling.
Yeah, he's always a guy who can put up numbers, and if he's actually shooting the ball well, he's a decent player. I never thought he would be a good fit next to Dame and CJ, because he's kind of much like another player they have that isn't playing yet is Justice Winslow, where they're not good enough to be like your main ball handler, but that's the role they succeed the most in. But he's actually been playing pretty well in that role this year.
Yep, and they have good shooting bigs. You know, Valanciunas can knock down threes, Clark can knock down threes, Jaren Jackson Jr., when he's healthy, can knock down threes, so you can kind of get away with like a mediocre 3-point shooting threat than like a Kyle Anderson. But here's the thing, he's through 5 games, he's averaging 16 points per game, 9 rebounds, 4 assists per game. He's shooting 5.4 3-point attempts per game. His next closest season in terms of 3-point attempts was last season. He shot 1.3 3-point attempts per game. So, yeah, he's shooting a lot more threes. He's shooting 33% from them. He shot 2 for 6 tonight. So he's stepped up for them when they've needed somebody to step up because they're insanely hurt. I mean, you just look at their bench. They played 9 guys tonight. Here's who they played off the bench. Gorgie Jang, solid backup big, right? Ricky Desmond Bain. They played Sean McDermott 19 minutes tonight. Sean McDermott, not Doug McDermott. For a second when I was looking at this box score, I was like, when did they get Doug McDermott? But no, Sean McDermott out of Butler. I think he's probably on a two-way contract, played 19 minutes. They played John how do you say his name? Concher? You know who I'm talking about?
I think it's Concar.
Concar. Yeah, they played him 27 minutes, so they really did not have much off the bench. But they got the win. They moved to 2-3 on the season. They were playing the Hornets, who were led by offensive maestro Bismack Biyombo, who had 16 points, was 0 for 1 from the three-point line. There's a clip on social media of Bismack Biyombo shooting a three, and the Hornets announcer saying something like, "Oh my goodness," and then he basically airballed. It is pretty funny. But LaMelo Ball had 15 off the bench, 6 for 14 from the field, 2 for 7 from the three-point line. He had 15 points, 6 assists. He's been better than I expected during his rookie season. Their starting backcourt was a combined 2 for 21. That's Devontae Graham, Terry Rozier. So maybe the LaMelo Ball is making a case to start over one of those guys with his play lately.
Yep. HCP wants to call in with a question.
Yeah, you gotta pay for that, my guy. This is not the fifth. This is not Rip City Radio, the fifth quarter with Chad Doing. This is Blazers Uprise postgame show with Eric Brand and Torrey Jones. Little different how we do things here. Moving on to the next game, you had the Detroit Pistons beating the Boston Celtics, getting their first win on the season. They moved to 1-4. A letdown game for the Celtics. Jeremy Grant has played very well this season. He only shot 9 for 24, but he did pour in 24 points. He's kind of their go-to scorer. I never thought I'd say that about Jeremy Grant, but he's averaging over 20 a game for him so far this season. What have you thought about his play so far?
Who was that? I missed who you were talking about.
Jeremy Grant.
Oh, Jeremy Grant. Yeah. I mean, you knew he was going to get a lot more shots.
This is what he said he wanted. He wanted the ball in his hands.
Yep. He hasn't done it efficiently, though. I saw Keith Smith had a tweet earlier, and someone was saying, like, we just lost to the Pistons without because he's like a Celtics guy or whatever. Mm-hmm. But he said, we just lost to the Pistons without their best player or whatever. He's like, are you sure Jeremy Grant's not their best player? But yeah, I don't know. I didn't like the move by both Jeremy Grant and by Detroit. But I mean, he's putting up numbers. But I didn't expect him to not put up numbers because if you give someone $20 million, you're going to give him a chance. But yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know what the Pistons are doing. It's weird, but they won tonight. So.
Their starting lineup tonight was Killian Hayes, Josh Jackson, Sadiq Bey, Jeremy Grant, Mason Plumlee, and they got the win. Killian Hayes didn't score a single point in 23 minutes, but their other starting rookie, your guy Sadiq Bey, had 17 points, 7 rebounds on 5 for 11 shooting, including 5 for 8 from 3. So that's a good game for him. That's the best game of his young career. Josh Jackson has also been solid for them. For the Celtics, they did not shoot the ball well. They shot 25% from 3. Tatum had 28. Jaylen Brown had 25. Outside of that, they didn't really get much contribution from anyone. Let's move on. You got the Mavericks being the Heat. Unfortunately, always root against the Mavericks as our Western Conference rival. They won by a score of 93-83. Pretty low-scoring game there. Yeah. Jimmy Butler only had 2 points in 27 minutes for the Miami Heat. All that talk about him being better than Dame, no. But the Mavericks were led by Luka, who that's a more legitimate conversation. I'm still putting Dame above him, but that's a more legitimate conversation, Luka versus Dame compared to Jimmy Butler versus Dame. Luka had 27 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists, so he filled the stat sheet there. They had 18 from Tim Hardaway Jr. The Heat were led by Bam Adebayo with 19 points. Miami hasn't looked good so far this season. They're 2-3. I mean, you got to wonder how much of that playoff run is a fluke, or maybe it's just a slow start this season and the start is a fluke. It's kind of hard to figure that team out right now.
They lost Derrick Jones Jr. That's their problem, right?
Yep, the difference maker there is definitely Derrick Jones Jr. Atlanta looks good so far. They're 4-1 with their only loss being a close loss to the Nets. They played the Nets again tonight and beat them by a score of 114-96. And the Nets had both Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, so this wasn't a shorthanded Nets team. Only guy they were missing is Spencer Dinwiddie, who's now out for the season. Atlanta looks legitimate. Their offense looks great, and holding this Brooklyn Nets team to 96 points is definitely an accomplishment. They were led by Trae Young, who had 21 points and 7 assists. DeAndre Hunter had 23 points on 9 for 10 shooting, 3 for 4 from the three-point line. John Collins had 20. You had Kevin Huerter off the bench with 10. They're without Danilo Gallinari, who's out for a few weeks, so they're as shorthanded as the Nets were. Atlanta looks serious, man. How good do you think this team could be just based on the first 5 games of this season?
I still think their problem will be defensively, especially in the playoffs. But they can outscore pretty much anyone too, especially if Trae Young gets hot. So I think they're looking like they should definitely make the playoffs. I thought they were probably on the verge of being one of the teams out, but they've definitely looked better than that group of teams we talked about fighting for those last few spots between them and Washington, and I think there was one other team we were talking about, Orlando maybe. Orlando just looked all right, but I think Atlanta's clearly the class of those 3 teams, at least early on.
Yep. So I definitely think they're at least that 8th place playoff team ahead of Washington, ahead of Orlando. With how they're playing, they might be a bit higher than 8th. It'll be interesting to see how their season progresses from this hot start. You got the Bucks winning by a score of 126-96 against the Bulls. The Bucks have been super inconsistent this season. They moved to 3-3 on the season. They were led with 29 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists from Giannis. Chris Middleton poured in 14. Bryn Forbes had 18 points off the bench. This is just the Bucks beating a bad team, but they haven't started too hot. The top 2 teams from the top. I would say the top 3 teams from the Eastern Conference last year. I don't know if you'd count Boston, but you had Miami, who made it to the finals. You had the Celtics. I'm forgetting the Celtics, but 3. Let me just completely restart because I'm butchering this. 3 of the top 4 teams have looked very bad, considering how they looked last season. Toronto is 1-3 with their only win being over the Knicks. They don't look too good. Miami has struggled. Milwaukee has struggled. They're 3-3. They've gotten blown out by the Knicks. They've had some good performances, but Milwaukee is not the same team as they were last season. Everybody's saying Brooklyn Nets are going to step up, but the Brooklyn Nets just got blown out by the Atlanta Hawks. I think this conference is completely wide open this year. It's going to be really interesting to see how some of these teams progress, because a lot of the top teams in the Eastern Conference don't look good. Do not look good.
Yep. Plus, there's 10 less games this season, so there's not as much time for it to factor out through the long haul. Usually after 82 games, you have a good sense. I know 10 games isn't a huge amount, but if you get off to a start and you're, 10-12 or something after 22 games, you might find it hard to make the playoffs, and that hasn't been the case in the East with a couple of teams in recent years making it even with below 500 records. But you can't really mess around as much as in the past in the East, because it's pretty deep in terms of teams that can make the playoffs.
Yep. The Celtics are also 3-3, and they just lost to that Detroit Pistons team. So they haven't played too well, and they of course lost Gordon Hayward. So it'll be interesting to see how that conference shakes itself out. Speaking of an Eastern Conference team, the Washington Wizards got their first win in the season. They beat the Minnesota Timberwolves by a score of 130-109. They were led by Bradley Beal, who had 31 points. You know what's funny?
Westbrook didn't play.
Westbrook didn't play. Yep. Westbrook didn't play. Raul Neto started in place of him, and he had 12 points on 5 for 7 shooting in 22 minutes. So, Westbrook doesn't play. The Wizards win. Westbrook plays. They're 0-5. Maybe that's just a coincidence.
Cat didn't play either, though.
Yeah, this Minnesota Timberwolves team is starting Naz Reid at center instead of Cat. I mean, Naz Reid had 17 points in 24 minutes on 7 for 10 from the field and 1 for 3 from three-point land. That's not a bad game for him. But yeah, he's definitely no Karl Anthony Towns. On the other side of things, Malik Beasley led the Timberwolves with 21 points. D'Angelo Russell had 14 on 6 for 16 shooting. He hasn't looked too impressive this season. He's only averaging about 16 a game, and he hasn't been all that efficient from the field. Yeah, man, they gave up a top 3 protected first-round pick in this year's draft to get D'Angelo Russell. That is a steal. I know they gave up Andrew Wiggins, who's horribly overrated and horribly overpaid, but D'Angelo Russell is not as impactful as advertised for the Timberwolves team, and he needs to step up with Karl Anthony Towns out. And I mean, they are 2-3, so they're not too far behind, but he's going to have to step up in the future and have better performances than he's been having.
For sure. And the rookie Anthony Edwards, who Dame might be releasing a diss track on. Did you see that?
Yeah. I'll be interested to see what that is.
Dame teased a diss track. But he had 7 of 16 shooting, 17 points, but 2 of 8 from 3.
Yeah.
He's actually shooting... I was trying to find.
He's shooting 42% from the field, 31% from 3 through his first 5 games, averaging 15 points per game, though. So if he can bring that efficiency up, he'll definitely be a impactful player for him. But that was kind of the knock in college, was that he wasn't that efficient of a player. Jake Layman had 12 points in 15 minutes, 2 for 6 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3. He has shot 9 free throws somehow. So, yeah, good to see Jake Layman doing well.
For sure.
Lakers beat the Spurs 109-103. They moved to 4-2 on the season. They squeaked out this win. LeBron James had triple-double with 26, 11, and 10 on 8 for 22 shooting. Anthony Davis had 34 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists on 13 for 26 from the field, including 4 for 6 from the three-point line. Dennis Schroeder had 15, KCP 11, Kyle Kuzma 11 off the bench. For the Spurs, I mean, they were missing LaMarcus Aldridge. They got a great performance out of Keldon Johnson, who had 26 points and 10 rebounds on 7 for 11 from the field. DeMar DeRozan had 23 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, almost had a triple-double of his own. Rudy Gay off the bench with 15, Patty Mills with 10. I mean, San Antonio, I don't know, man. How many games has Aldridge missed? Because I haven't really paid a lot of attention to them.
I'm not sure, actually. I know they were 2-0 and have lost their last 3 now, but I'm not sure how many of those Aldridge has missed.
They've been a little bit more competitive than I've expected, just based off of scoreboard watching that I've done of them. But, yeah, I mean, you still got some decent players on that team. You still got DeJounte Murray, DeMar DeRozan. Keldon Johnson is stepping up, and he's had a good season so far. He's averaging 15 points per game and doing it very efficiently. He's shooting 54% from the field and 51% from 3. They got some players there.
It looked like he got hurt in the New Orleans game, their 3rd game of the season, and then they lost that game, and then they played the Lakers the last 2 games. Mm-hmm. So hard to get too much of that, but they beat Memphis and Toronto their first 2 games. So yeah.
I mean, you got Rudy Gay, Patty Mills, Derek White off the bench. Like you got some people there, man.
Yeah, Derek White. I think this was his first game because he had been hurt. So yeah, he'll have to work back into shape too.
It'll be interesting to see how their season progresses. The Suns move to 5-1. They beat the Denver Nuggets, who fall to 1-4. The Nuggets have not looked good so far this season. The Suns beat them by a score of 106-103. That game was in Denver. The Suns were led by Devin Booker, who had 22 points. DeAndre Ayton had 22 points. Chris Paul had 21 points. So their big 3 combined for 65 points for them. Mikal Bridges played 36 minutes, had 14 points. He is now entrenched as a starter on that team, a guy who me and Eric have always liked. And led off the bench, they were led by Langston Galloway, who had 9 points in 7 minutes. The Suns look good, man, and I hate to say it. It's still pretty early on in the season, and I wouldn't say they've played a super tough schedule. They have... Let me just look and see who they've played. They've played the Mavericks without Kristaps. They won by 4. They beat the Kings by 3. Then they beat the Kings again by 16. They beat the Pelicans by, I think, like 25. And then they beat the Jazz by 11. The Jazz being consistent. So this team looks legit, but have to wait and see. They do play the Clippers next, so that'll be an interesting game to watch. The Suns look legitimate, though.
So yeah, Jose Hernandez was asking this earlier. I told him to wait until this point. So he says... Suns fans delusional, saying they will make the 3 seed and claim they're better than the Blazers. What are your guys' thoughts?
They haven't proven that at all. If they played our schedule, they would probably be 3-2. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they did beat the Jazz and we lost to them, but, I mean, we beat the Lakers. We played the Clippers. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, our schedule isn't that hard, but it's just early on this season, like, there will be a lot of noise. Teams will start off really hot and then fall back down to earth if they're shooting well. If everybody's kind of on fire from 3, that'll happen. If a team plays 5 generally easy teams, they'll get off to a better start than a team that plays 5 playoff teams to start their season. So there's a noise with records, and yeah, Suns fans that are saying that they're guaranteed the 3 seed or that they're going to get the 3 seed are getting a little too ahead of themselves with that one.
Well, especially since they started off hot last year and then came crashing down, didn't even make the playoffs. But they were saying the same thing, like, oh, look how much brighter of a team and future they have over a team like Portland and stuff, and then they fade out and don't make it. I know they went 8-0 in the bubble, but they really struggled at times, and Ayton got caught doping.
Oh yeah, hopefully for his sake and their sake, he's not doping anymore. But the Nuggets have really struggled, man. They had 31 for Jamal Murray, 12 for 22. Jokic had 17, 11 and 9, almost had a triple double. But dude, that roster's downgraded. They don't have anywhere near the same amount of depth. They're 1-4. I don't like. Obviously, they're probably going to make the playoffs. I would be shocked if they missed the playoffs, but I don't think they're at the same level they were last season. I think that's due to them losing a lot of depth. They lost Jeremy Grant. They lost Mason Plumlee. Michael Porter Jr. missed tonight's game. They can't really absorb injuries like they have in the past, and they have a couple injury-prone players. So this team is just not the same. They traded Malik Beasley at the trade deadline last year, so this team is not the same Nuggets team from last year, in my opinion.
Did you hear why Michael Porter Jr. is out?
I kind of skimmed over it, and it was something weird, but I forget. Why was he out?
Health and safety protocols. Apparently, he might have the COVID.
Yeah, and if you know that guy's viewpoints on things,
yeah.
You probably, yeah, I'm not even going to get into that. You guys can look it up if you want to know.
Oh, it wasn't a hoax, Kevin Reese, or People's Mix. It was population control or something.
Population control. Well, I guess he's being controlled with the virus right now, man. Michael Porter. Yeah, I'm not a Michael Porter Jr. fan, to say the least. Last game of the night, you had Utah beating the Clippers by a score of 106-100. The Jazz got off to a quick, big early lead. They started off hot from 3. They kind of cooled off as the game went on, but the Clippers could not complete the comeback. Mike Conley is looking a bit better this season compared to last year. He's averaging 21, 5, and 5, and he's doing it efficiently. He had 33 points and 7 assists for them. They've needed him to step up because Donovan Mitchell is not having a good early season start. He had 15 points, 5 assists on 6 from 14 shooting for the Jazz. They also had 12 from Gobert, 14 off the bench from Favors, and 11, 8, and 7 off the bench from Joe Ingles. The Jazz are just a hard team to figure out. They always start the season super inconsistent, then turn it on late, and then lose in the first round. That's kind of their recipe. So I don't know. It's kind of sticking to it. They look great against the Blazers, and then they had a letdown loss the night after, or the game after. So it's kind of hard to figure out their team.
Yeah, for sure.
But they get the win against the Clippers. The Clippers only put 100 points on the board, so they didn't shoot nearly as well as they did against the Blazers. The Clippers did shoot 39% from 3, 13 for 33, but they shot 38% from the field. They shot worse from 2 than they did from the three-point line, so the Jazz's interior defense really stepped up. Kawhi Leonard had 20 points, 16 rebounds, 9 assists. Paul George had 25 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. Outside of that, they got 13 from Serge Ibaka, but not a whole lot of help there from the supporting cast.
Yeah, glad to have that Clippers game back.
Yeah. Or I mean, it's always interesting to see a team the night after they kill the Blazers struggle and lose a game, because the Jazz, they struggled and lost the night after they played the Blazers. The Clippers, they struggled and lost the game they played after. I butchered that. The Jazz struggled and lost after blowing out the Blazers. The Clippers struggled and lost to the Jazz after blowing out the Blazers. So it's kind of funny. I've noticed that in the past. Whenever the Blazers get blown out by a team, that team then goes on to lose their next game and look pretty mediocre. So, but that's the NBA this year in general.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, that wraps up around the NBA.
Can we talk about Nas for a minute?
Do you want to talk about him now, or do you want to save it for Monday?
Let's just talk about it real quick since it came out. Because people were asking questions earlier. I said to wait.
Okay.
But and we'll have another game between now and then, so there'll be other stuff. But so someone said earlier, I think it was Alex Wolf, said, like, do you think Little will be mad he's not in the rotation? Apparently, he's not even close to being ready to play, and it's not going to happen anytime soon. Apparently, so he was for sure the guy who had it. We figured that out pretty easily, but. My man Reese had his resources too, but apparently he got really sick, lost over 20 pounds, and he's not even like he was excited that he actually dunked a basketball the other day, and he said he's just not going to be physically ready to play in the NBA for a few weeks at least.
At least we know now, though, kind of what happened and what the deal with that was. And we learned a little bit more about what happened in the bubble. He had a concussion and tried to rush back from it, and then he ended up fainting. So, and whenever a player faints, you definitely want to be very cautious with that. So, that's why he didn't play in the bubble.
But I'm glad he's okay now, and hopefully he gets back into shape soon. If we're gonna have some people out with injuries, we could use a guy like that. Getting a chance. I don't know how much he'll play normally, but
it's easy to forget that he's even on the team. You know what I mean? Because he's just been gone for so long. But hopefully we see him back in a Blazer uniform at some point in January. But it sounds like that might not be the case. But at least we know what's going on with him. At least we got a legitimate update. And of course, it was Jason Quick giving us the legitimate update. He's really the only person in this media field that actually gives us any insight on the Blazers. Nice to actually know what's going on with Nasir Little.
Yeah. I mean, I was hoping it was just a matter if he got it and was one of those guys who just had to be isolated and was asymptomatic and then was fine. But that's kind of scary that he was that sick about it. And, he's is he like 20 years old and he's a professional athlete and stuff like that. So
hey, Chad Doing says it doesn't affect young athletes at all, man. But you've seen, that Keontae Johnson's situation was scary, and Nasir Little had it pretty bad, and you've had players in other sports that have had to miss the rest of their season because they've had myocarditis, which is caused by COVID. So it's definitely not something you want to get. Even if you're young, it can definitely give you some lingering issues afterwards, some long-term health issues that you have to deal with, and it's not, for some of these young people, it's not a walk in the park. It wasn't a walk in the park for Nas. My sister got it. It wasn't a walk in the park for her, so it's not something that you want to get, despite what they say about it being, fine for young people to contract it. It's definitely not something you want.
Yeah, for sure.
So anyway,
hopefully it gets better.
Hopefully he gets better. Hopefully he gets back in shape, and it's going to be a uphill climb for him, but he'll get back and he'll be fine.
One part of that article that has me on the flip side very excited. So it said in there that heading into the bubble, that all the teammates, all the coaching staff was just amazed at his progress throughout his first season, and at times in practice looked like the best player on the team. And that could just be lip service at times, but you love to hear stories about like stuff like that, because despite all the injuries and physical conditions and illnesses and stuff like that, once he's healthy, he's going to work his butt off, and he has a great work ethic. And so when you have the skill set he has combined with a work ethic to get better, I think that bodes well for him actually being a rotational player, at least at the very minimum in the future. Probably not this year, but, starting next year maybe.
Yep, I agree. So anyway, that wraps up the Blazers Uprise post-game show. The Blazers get a blowout win tonight, which is rare for us to say. Hopefully there's a lot more this season. Hopefully the Blazers can take care of the second game of the back-to-back against the Golden State Warriors. We will have that post-game show on Sunday. Is that an early game? I think it's I
Uh,
think it might be 6 p.m. I'm not entirely
yeah,
sure.
a lot of the Sunday games start at 6. I
Yeah.
don't think it's earlier than that, but I can look it up real quick.
It'll be nice to have a little bit earlier game than this one. This one tipped off at like 7:40. So,
Yeah.
Destrom, we're not doing trade talk stuff. It's the start of the season.
Well, he's proposing a trade that's not even possible, so I don't know why he's talking about.
Yeah, I don't get it either. Yeah, we'll
This
do a couple, but it's
says
not really
5:30.
Yeah, 5:30. Okay, 5:30 tip time. So we'll have the post game show going live around 8. It'll be a little bit. It'll be nice to have it a little bit earlier on Sunday. So anyway, yeah, thank you for watching the stream. Thank you to everybody who donated, and thank you to everybody who participated in chat. The Blazers have an impressive performance tonight. I hope they can string together more of them. Hopefully they can repeat this performance against the Warriors on Sunday, as this is one of those back-to-backs that are a little bit more commonplace this season. So anyway, yeah, man, this was a fun stream. It's always nice to have a relaxing stream after a blowout and not have anything to really complain about. Hoping we get more of these as we head into 2021. So we'll keep you covered on Sunday with that post-game stream. We'll be live on Monday with Blazers Uprise Live. Until we catch you next, hopefully you guys have a good rest of your weekend. And as always, peace out.